They said he was mad. They said no man could fight ice and win. They laughed as he hammered wood into a wall of frozen water, as snow fell like ash from a silent sky. Winter will bury you, they said. Spring will wash you away, they said. But when the coldest winter in living memory came, when rivers froze solid, when roofs groaned under ice, when firewood vanished, the same people who laughed would one day stand quietly at the mouth of a frozen waterfall, staring at the only place where warmth still lived. Only then did they understand what he had built. High in the European mountains, sometime in the late 19th century, there was a village so small that maps often forgot it. Stone homes leaned into the hills as if bracing themselves against the wind. Smoke rose thin and uncertain from chimneys. Life there was shaped by routine and restraint, by sunrise and snowfall, by hands hardened through honest labor. The people did not expect comfort. They expected survival. Above the village stood Valkenfall, a towering waterfall that roared with life in summer and transformed into a vertical glacier in winter. When frozen, it became a wall of blue-white ice, thick as a fortress, humming faintly with the movement of water trapped behind it. Children feared it. Travelers avoided it. The elders said it was ancient, untamable, and not meant for man. Near that waterfall lived a carpenter named Elias Hargreave. Elias was not loud, nor charismatic, nor especially ambitious. He was observant, quiet, a man who noticed patterns others dismissed as coincidence. He had learned wood the way some men learned language, by listening to it, respecting it, never forcing it to behave unnaturally. For years, Elias built doors, tables, beams, and cradles. His work was steady and reliable. But times were changing. Factories in the valleys below began producing cheaper goods, faster than any pair of hands could manage. Slowly, orders stopped coming. Coins grew rare. Winters felt longer. And each year, the cold claimed something it hadn't the year before. An old shepherd who never woke after a storm. A roof that collapsed under ice. A child whose cough grew quieter until it stopped. People called it God's will. Elias called it preventable. One evening, as winter crept in early, Elias stood before Valkenfall. The ice had already begun forming, sealing the outer face of the waterfall into a solid curtain. As he pressed his palm against it, he felt something unexpected. Not cold. Warmth? Very faint. Barely there, but unmistakable. Behind the ice, water still moved. And where water moved, it resisted the cold. The ice wasn't an enemy. It was insulation, thicker than stone, shielding the living current within. Elias stood there long after dusk, breath rising in slow clouds, a single thought forming with terrifying clarity. If the ice could protect the water, why couldn't it protect a man? He spoke of it first to his sister, Marta, over a simple meal. A cabin, he said, inside the waterfall. She laughed, then stopped when she saw his face. You mean behind it? She asked. No, inside it. Fear crossed her expression. Elias, it will kill you. It won't, he said quietly. Not if I listen. Word spread quickly. In a village with little to discuss, his idea became the season's entertainment. Some laughed openly. Others shook their heads with pity. The priest warned him against arrogance. Neighbors warned him against foolishness. They said winter would crush him. They said spring would drown him. They said he was wasting what little life he had left. Elias sold what he could. Traded furniture for iron spikes, rope, pitch, and tools. Before the first heavy snow fell, he began. Each morning, he climbed to the base of Valkenfall, as light crept over the peaks. He worked slowly, melting and carving a narrow entrance into the ice. Inside, sound changed. The roar of falling water became a deep, constant breath, like the mountain itself was alive. He anchored beams into hidden rock, framing a small cabin behind the ice wall. Larch wood for strength. Cloth and pitch for ceiling. Every cut was deliberate. Every movement patient. Villagers gathered at a distance, watching him work. Some whispered prayers. Some whispered jokes. Some waited for disaster. His hands split and bled. His beard froze solid more than once. But day by day, the shape of shelter emerged. A door. A hearth. A narrow window, angled toward the weak winter sun. Then winter arrived fully. Snow fell without pause. Winds screamed through the valley. Paths vanished. Firewood disappeared faster than expected. And Elias disappeared into the waterfall. For weeks, no one saw him. They assumed the worst. Until one night, during a storm so violent it shook the mountains, a faint orange glow flickered behind the frozen wall. Firelight. Smoke drifted upward through a hidden vent. Elias was alive. Inside the cabin, the temperature held steady. The thick ice blocked the wind. The moving water behind the walls released just enough warmth to make the space livable. His hearth burned slowly, efficiently. While others slept in coats and gloves, Elias sat at a table. While roofs cracked under ice, his walls held firm. While breath froze in the air, liquid water whispered behind him. By late winter, desperation crept into the village. An elderly couple lost their home. A mother ran out of fuel with an infant barely days old. One evening, someone climbed the path to Waterfall and knocked. Elias opened the door. He didn't smile. He didn't lecture. He simply stepped aside. That night, 6 people shared the warmth of the cabin. The next night, more came. Elias expanded carefully, carving chambers deeper into the ice, guiding meltwater away, never rushing. The waterfall became more than shelter. It became a gathering place. People talked again, shared food, shared stories, laughed quietly, as if afraid to break the miracle. When spring finally came, the villagers waited for collapse. They believed the thaw would destroy everything. But Elias had listened to the water. He had carved channels, anchored the structure to stone. When the ice retreated, the cabin remained hidden, intact, breathing quietly with the mountain. Waterfall roared again, and Elias walked out alive. He never became famous, never left the mountains. But the village was changed forever. Homes were rebuilt with better insulation. Winter was respected, not feared blindly. And every year, when the waterfall froze, children were told the story of the man they laughed at. The man who listened. The man who built warmth where no one thought it possible. Because winter does not care about laughter. Winter only respects understanding. And Elias Hargreave understood. The warning came on an old radio that usually played music from another decade. The signal crackled, faded, returned, and then a strained voice cut through the static. Severe Arctic front approaching. Temperatures expected to fall to -40 degrees Celsius. Blizzard conditions likely. Impact in 10 days. 10 days. I stood still in the small kitchen, one hand wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Outside, the village looked peaceful. Snow resting gently on stone roofs, smoke rising straight into a pale winter sky. The kind of quiet that tricks people into believing nothing bad could ever happen there. But winter in these parts didn't arrive politely. It arrived like a verdict. I already knew something others hadn't yet admitted to themselves. The house I lived in would not survive that storm. Thin walls, aging beams, a roof that sighed under heavy snow, even in mild winters. And I knew something else too. If I stayed above ground, I would die. There was nothing heroic about me. I wasn't a survivalist, or an engineer, or a man raised by the mountains. I was a repairman. The kind people called when doors stuck or pipes froze. The kind who learned things by necessity, not by choice. I was 38 years old. My hands were permanently rough, cracked from cold iron and cheap soap. My back ached every morning before I even moved. My life had been built from small routines, early walks to the bakery, evenings fixing radios or chairs for neighbors, quiet meals eaten alone. My wife had died 3 winters earlier. Pneumonia. Quick and cruel. One week she was laughing at the table, complaining about drafts under the door. The next, I was standing in a white room listening to words that sounded final long before I understood them. After that, the house felt wrong. Too empty. Too loud in its silence. I moved to the edge of the village, closer to the forest, to a smaller place where the wind spoke louder than memories. That place was now directly in the path of the storm. When I told people what I planned to do, they didn't argue at first. They laughed. Underground, an old man said, wiping foam from his mustache at the cafe. In this soil? Another added. You'll hit frost before you hit hope. Someone leaned in, lowering his voice like he was offering advice instead of mockery. People don't fight winters like this, he said. They endure them, or they don't. I listened. I nodded. I finished my drink and walked out. Because endurance had already taken enough from me. That night, I sat at the table with a candle and a stack of scrap paper. I wasn't drawing plans so much as possibilities. Rough shapes. Lines that might become walls. Arrows showing airflow, heat, escape. Escape. The land behind my house sloped gently upward toward a rock shelf. The soil there was dense but stable. Underground temperatures stayed relatively constant, even in extreme cold. The earth itself could become insulation, protection, shelter. They started calling it wisdom. Give me in pure form. Everyone said it was impossible. They said the ground would turn to iron before a shovel could bite into it. They said winter like that didn't negotiate, didn't forgive, didn't care how badly a man wanted to live. But there are moments in ordinary lives when fear becomes quieter than resolve. Moments when a person stops asking the world for permission. The warning came on an old radio that usually played music from another decade. The signal cracked and faded, then returned with a voice stretched thin by distance and urgency. Severe Arctic front approaching. Temperatures expected to fall to -40 degrees Celsius. Blizzard conditions likely. Impact in 10 days. 10 days. I stood in the small kitchen, one hand wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Outside, the village lay still beneath a gentle layer of snow. Stone houses, tiled roofs, chimneys breathing narrow lines of smoke into a pale sky. It looked peaceful. Beautiful even. The kind of winter scene painters loved. But winters like this didn't arrive gently. They arrived like verdicts. I already knew what others hadn't admitted yet. The house I lived in would not survive that storm. The walls were thin, the beams old, the roof already bowed under ordinary snowfall. And I knew something else, something colder and clearer. If I stayed above ground, I would die. There was nothing remarkable about me.